You want to know which running back should be in your lineup for week 15 and who you should avoid? Stay tuned and we'll give you our must starts and must sits. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Last week, we told you you had to keep David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, and Cam Akers in your lineup, and they paid off big. So, Chris, who's on the list this week?
Well, I'm going to tell you to start Jonathan Taylor again. Another great matchup for Jonathan Taylor. He's starting to look, every year there's that running back who, is either disappointed all year or kind of come out of nowhere, and he looks like one of those running backs. Monster game last week. Now he gets a Houston team who's allowing 152 yards per game on the ground and 17 touchdowns. And if you look at Jonathan Taylor over the last 3 games, he's moved more towards, I don't want to say a workhorse role, but he's moved more towards that number 1 role. He's got 22, 13, and 20 carries over the last 3 games. And if that's not enough, he also has 9 catches over that span. So he's getting enough volume in a smash spot to be another guy that you have to roll out there this week with tons of upside.
Absolutely. I mean, absolute must start. He's taken a beating probably more than anybody in the fantasy community. Everyone's so aggravated because Jonathan Taylor was such an early pick with such high hopes and did really nothing for fantasy owners up until a couple of weeks ago. And now you have to take everything bad that you said back about him because he could wind up being a league winner. All right, so speaking of steamrolling, those last couple of weeks, besides Taylor, one of the best backs has been David Montgomery. That's right. David Montgomery also did very little. He got the volume, got the touches, what you want to see in a workhorse back, but he just wasn't doing very much in terms of yards per carry, wasn't getting the end zone. Well, forget all that. Since the bye week, David Montgomery has been one of the best running backs in all of fantasy, a top 5 scorer. He's been a top 10 fantasy running back for 3 straight weeks since their bye. And I know that the matchups have been pretty good. This one isn't on paper quite as good because Minnesota's defense has been much better lately. And I know Minnesota known to give up points in the passing game, but this is the Bears. They're going to still go with Montgomery first, establish the ground game. He is one of the hottest backs in the league. He looks like a different player for whatever reason. So you've got to keep him in your lineup. I know we're going to get a lot of start-sit questions about him. The answer will be start every time.
Yeah, Montgomery's another one of those running backs, kind of like Taylor, who had a slow start to the season, but he's turning it on when it matters most. And he could win some teams a fantasy championship. And speaking of another running back that we get a lot of start-sit questions about, that's Chris Carson. I don't know why, but we get a lot of questions about should I start Chris Carson or a different running back? And usually my answer is Chris Carson, and it's going to be my answer again this week. I know you look at the game last week against the Jets and you think, oh, he only had 15 carries, but he got pulled in that game, I think late in the 3rd quarter or early in the 4th because they were just blowing him out and they didn't need him anymore. He's caught 3 passes in each of the last 2 games, and I know the matchup isn't the best against Washington, but I don't care. He's a lock for 15 to 20 touches plus 2 to 3 catches, if not more. And here's the thing. He's really good, right? He's really good. I don't care about this Washington front. I'm not worried about it. I'm not scared of it. I trust in Chris Carson. You should too. So if you got him, you get him in your lineup.
Yeah, Washington's defense looked pretty good last week, but still, Chris Carson, that Seattle offense is a little bit better than San Francisco's. All right, so let's go back to a rookie running back, and this is the time where the young players shine, especially at running back because they got those fresh legs. I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins as my next must start for 2 reasons. So first of all is the obvious, the matchup. Going against Jacksonville, kind of a no-brainer. I know there's been concern all year about Dobbins. What kind of workload is he going to get because part of that 3-man committee? But we can forget that because Mark Ingram is basically non-existent now. They've barely used him. He's been phased out. He won't be back in Baltimore next year. And they're going to give more touches to Dobbins. Edwards is also actually a nice play, but I think Dobbins is the lead back here. He's had double-digit carries in 5 of his last 6 games. And the last 3 games, he's averaging 5 yards a carry with a touchdown in each. Really good chance to score. And again, this game against Jacksonville, you got to figure there's a really good chance for Baltimore to run up the score anyway. So I really like Dobbins locked in as an RB2 this week.
Yeah, and we know Baltimore wants to run the ball. They want to run the ball with Jackson. They want to run the ball with Edwards, but they especially want to run the ball with Dobbins. And against Jacksonville, they should have no problem doing that. So I agree. And then speaking of young legs, young, fresh legs, how about your boy Cam Akers? He officially is the guy. There's no doubt anymore that he is a guy, right? Over 20 carries in each of his last 2 games. Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson barely even in the mix anymore. He's even catching passes. We saw him on Thursday night last week just run wild in that game, all over that defense. And now he gets an even better matchup against the Jets, right? The Jets are allowing 117 yards per game over their last 3 games, and they've given up 14 touchdowns on the season. No reason to think Akers isn't a top 10 running back this week in this matchup. Locked into 20-plus carries, like I said. If you've been holding on to him all year, or if you picked him up late because he was on your waivers, enjoy it. He may bring you a fantasy championship this year.
I'm on board with this. I just feel like it's a given. For me, Akers is a must start. I've been telling you for weeks, guys, if you watch our waiver wire videos, I think it's been 5 weeks running telling you, pick up Cam Akers. Hopefully you listened the first time, because here it is, time where he's going to win you your league. So if you have Akers, congratulations. And then my last start. Now, this seems like a deeper league pick, but this is a guy who could surprise this week, Jeff Wilson of the 49ers. Now, we know Raheem Mostert's the lead back there, but his ankle is still bothering him. Had an MRI done on Monday. They're still waiting for results as of right now. And he could be limited, could be even out this whole week. But even if he plays, you saw he just hasn't quite been himself. And the other guys that we used to talk about, Jerick McKinnon was the thing for a while. He got 0 touches last game. Tevin Coleman is technically back, but they have shown 0 interest in getting him the ball. Also 0 touches last game. Wilson has been getting a lot of touches anyways. So if he is the main back going against Dallas this coming week, he's a guy that not only has a great chance to score a touchdown, but also could pile up some yards. And we've seen him have a good game against an NFC East opponent early this year. He had a monster game against the Giants. I feel like Wilson's going to get the ball a lot more than people expect. I have him as a top 20 running back, which means in most leagues, he's an RB2. So this is your sneaky pick of the week. I feel like if I have him somewhere, I'm starting him.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely going under the radar. And I like him whether Mostert plays or not. Obviously, if Mostert doesn't play, that's a big bump. But I think even if Mostert plays, Wilson's going to get enough touches. And against this Dallas defense, I mean, you want any player going against the Dallas defense that you can get in your lineup.
That's right. So speaking of that game, we're going to get to our must-sits, guys we don't like. Let's go to the other side of the ball. I'd say it's a surprising name, but at this point, it really isn't.
Yeah, it's Ezekiel Elliott. You've got to ignore the name of the player, and you got to really look at what's going on, the situation, and how that player is performing. And Ezekiel Elliott's just not getting it done. He's not. And he hasn't really gotten it done outside of one game since Dak Prescott's injury. Only 12 carries last week. Tony Pollard, he's getting plenty of work. He's getting plenty of run, eating into Zeke's workload. But not only that, it gets a tough matchup against that San Francisco defense. They rank 8th in yards per game to running backs allowed, and they've only given up 8 rushing touchdowns total on the year. So you can't even, be sitting there hoping for a Zeke touchdown, because even that's unlikely. So throw out the name, grab somebody. I'd honestly start Jeff Wilson over Ezekiel Elliott this week. That's how low I am on Zeke.
And I'm there with you, obviously, talking about Wilson, his potential. I don't see that for Zeke. Honestly, he might get fewer touches. He's going against a tougher defense. And along those exact same lines, Todd Gurley, you think that's a guy you've just got to start. Well, no, you don't. We've been telling you the last couple of weeks, he's been a must sit here recently, and for good reason. As you can see, he's just not getting it done at all. He is totally touchdown dependent. And there's plenty of guys who get you a touchdown, even if they're not getting the ball as much as Gurley is. The last 3 games, he has 29, 20, and 31 total yards. He's not really a factor as a receiver anyways, at least not in Atlanta. He's not what he used to be. I don't know if the knee is bothering him, but he just looks like a different player than what he did in the beginning of the season. There's no chance against this tough Tampa Bay run defense. There's 0 chance I'm putting Gurley in a must-win playoff matchup. So just forget the name, keep him on your bench.
Yeah, you'd have to be extremely desperate to start Todd Gurley this week. This entire Falcons offense looks terrible, especially without Julio in there. I mean, outside of Calvin Ridley, there's nobody I trust, and definitely not Todd Gurley. And I also don't trust Damien Harris against your Dolphins. Over the last 4 games, his high in carries is only 16, and he's only topped 50 yards 1 time over that stretch. And unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but unfortunately for Damien Harris, Sonny Michel is back, and in the 2 games since Michel's been back, he's only had 14 and 11 carries. Miami's been good against the run. Actually, their defense has just been good in general, but they've been good against the run recently. They're only allowing 73 yards per game to running backs over the last 3 games. And with Damien Harris being nothing more than a between-the-tackle runner, no pass catching, and with Cam Newton vulturing goal line runs, he's impossible to trust this week in this matchup. Get him on your bench if you have him.
Yeah, Harris, he's one of my boys. I really love the way he plays. He runs hard and I mean, just watching him, he always seems to get chunks of yardage, right? But it's not going to happen. And kind of surprised Michel's getting as much run as he has been the last couple of weeks. He's starting to eat into the workload, which wasn't really great to begin with. So yeah, all those factors combined in a bad matchup, you can't do it. And then for the last must sit, Ronald Jones, been one of the best running backs in fantasy this whole year. Looks like he's not going to go for a couple of reasons. Number one, has a pinky issue similar to Chris Godwin, going to have a procedure done, and on the COVID list at the same time. I'd say it's pretty safe to say he's not going to play in week 15. And so who's next in line? It's Leonard Fournette. So my answer to that is no, just don't. All right. I was somebody who's a believer in Fournette before the year. I'm totally off that train now. He was benched, by the way. If you didn't know this, you wouldn't know because you probably weren't playing him anyways. Fournette was a scratch last week. Coach's decision. They decided LaShawn McCoy, still in the league, was going to be a better option for them. That shows you how much faith they have in Fournette. So even if Fournette is the starter, just don't. All right, that's all I have to say. Just don't. All right, guys, that does it for Running Back Start Sit. We mentioned we answer a lot of these questions and talking about Endgame Live, which is Sunday, every Sunday before kickoff, 2 hours. So join us there if you have questions about your team, whether it's running back or any position. We will definitely do our best to help you out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and check out our other videos to help you with all the best advice.